Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming and a new Shadow of Erdtree video. Today we're back for another 12.3 tier list overview, this time focusing on weapon skills. You may have noticed we recently covered Ashes of War, the skills you can apply to a bunch of different weapons. But weapon skills by comparison are the unique skills tied to say somber upgrade weapons that cannot be changed and are often unique just to this weapon. So with that, there's actually an incredibly large amount of great picks and options you could consider. There's so many good weapon skills. However, as usual with these tier lists, we're keeping it down to 15. So as you can see, we've got S plus down to C. So any of these are going to be one of the best weapon skills in the game you can consider, even though some of them are obviously bustedly good compared to just being really good like B and C. As always though, this is a PvE focused list and we are expecting rebalancing changes coming in the near future. So we'll be covering those and updating things when it does happen. So with that said, let's begin down at the bottom at C tier, with a new weapon in the DLC, the Ancient Meteoric or Greatsword, which comes with its unique weapon skill, White Light Charge. The weapon itself is a little bit weird. A mix of strength and arcane is a strange one, not lending itself to great synergy per se, but there's no denying the power and relevance of this specific weapon skill. It allows you to thrust forward very quickly with great range, dealing solid damage, and then with the follow-up you can explode with white light in good AoE. The damage value of this is great, the gap closing nature of it, the fact that it's a quick attack for a colossal sword that hits hard but is normally slower because of that, means it's an incredibly useful tool mid-fight for this kind of weapon. It essentially opens up the weapon into higher relevance and makes it one of the better picks in the game right now. But nothing about it is insane. The damage of the weapon skill part 1 or part 2 isn't busted. It doesn't have unbelievable stagger numbers, so it definitely deserves that acknowledgement. But let's go into B tier now where things get a lot more interesting. Starting with the new weapon, the falx, and its unique weapon skill, Revenger's Blade. I love this one, but it's got to be capped in a way. The weapon itself is a pair of curved swords. Very lightweight because you get 2 for 1. And of course the curved sword moveset and power stance is really good. The issue with the falx is how it's heavily outscaled by other curved swords that have better stats, better scaling opportunity. The reason this weapon is good is entirely because of its weapon skill, the Revenger's Blade, which is that double swipe leading into this massive successive hit combo. That successive hit combo leads to seriously impressive burst and will lead to procs of status like bleed. The downside is the lack of hyper armor or poise protection during the actual animation, so it must be timed in a suitable punish to get the full combo off while they're still recovering and turning for the next attack. So the potential is definitely there, but it's also not busted. It's just very good. Much like our next weapon, the Death Ritual Spear. This one again is largely carried by its unique weapon skill, Spear Call Ritual, which allows you from seriously impressive range to summon this AoE of spears that spawn from the location you're aiming, which when locked onto a target will be in a kind of large circle around them. The good / bad part about that is the fact that that circle is around the target. So as a boss moves around, especially the more evasive ones, it can actually miss the spawning location. But you can absolutely spam a target area right next to yourself or target a boss when it's pressed against you and get incredible DPS from that. Plus, because the actual animation goes off after that delay, you can cast it and then roll, and then while you're rolling, the attack comes out, hitting a boss while it's mid-combo, creating, yes, new opportunities of punish with this specific skill. And that's to say nothing of the high DPS potential of just spamming that out back to back and that being great. Also in B tier then, we have the Bloodhound's Fang and its unique weapon skill, Bloodhound's Finesse, which as you hit the target, jump back, iframe back in for a big follow-up. Now, it's a very popular weapon. A lot of people love this one for its raw damage, the built-in bleed, the range of the attack due to the length of the weapon, how good it is for jump attacks. The fact that it's buffable is crazy, but a large part of the relevance of the weapon does come from the weapon skill. The fact that it's a heavy hitter with an iframe dodge is a really valuable thing. It's great for staggering in general. Just the leap back part is a fine punish too. If you can get the full combo off consistently though, you get great damage as well as likely bleed procs and just overwhelming the target. There is no unbelievably broken DPS part of this. It's just consistent and easy to use, and that's why people love it. But there is a weapon I could compare to that, and that is the new weapon, the Death Knight's Longhaft Axe. This is a mix of physical and lightning, which is super buffable. The weapon itself is able to do quick light attack combos and solid horizontal style heavy attacks, but the weapon skill we're talking about is Blink Bolt Long-Hafted Axe, which despite this being a nice heavy hitter, is iframes again, just like Bloodhound's Fang, except much easier on this one. You dash forward and that's where the iframes are while you're kind of invisible lightning. That deals a tick of damage, you'll leap up and slam down, dealing more damage and more lightning proc. This can be used to open up new punish windows entirely, again because it's an instant iframe and also it's a gap closer, so it can be done even from mid-range. So the versatility of this weapon skill can't be understated either. It isn't necessarily the heaviest hitting thing in the game, but it's a solid hit that you you can spam and rely on those iframes to kind of ignore what the boss is doing a lot of the time. So I rate that really high. But above that in A tier, it's now time to talk about stuff where the DPS is also seriously good, such as say the Zammer curved sword, which is funny because the sword itself is not good, slow without enough real damage behind it. The reason it's so good is entirely the weapon skill Zamor Ice Storm, which, you know, compared to the sorcery, which is really good, this is better. Why? Because it provides you with actual poise protection during it, so you can reliably just use it whatever your target's doing, in exchange for slightly less damage than the sorcery. Having said that, there's a new talisman from the Divine Beast that will increase the potency of storm attacks like this one by 10%, so it's only better in the DLC. So it's quick, efficient, and effective, hits really hard, and you're building up incredible frost status instantly with it. It's one of the easiest ways to apply the status with a weapon skill, and you can continue to spam it for the damage of that, or rely on other tools now you've got the proc if you want to. So good at applying frost that it deserves A tier. Much like another weapon that's gone up recently, the Magma Wyrm Scalesword. I'm just in love with this weapon. It's one of my favorite things to use in general right now. You just have a big curved greatsword, right? But it comes with a unique moveset, which is really fun to use. Kind of all about being a guillotine, holding it above yourself and slamming it down. Whether that's jump heavies, charged heavies, that is tied to the weapon skill Magma Guillotine, which has you do the same thing. Slam down with an even heavier hit, leaving behind a magma pool, which has a weird follow-up where you drag the blade through that fire. But in any case, what it is super hard hitting, leaving lava on the ground for extra ticks of damage, and has a follow-up too. It's only better in the DLC with the new Talisman of the Dread, increasing the potency of magma skills such as this, which will combine and stack with the classic Alexander Talisman. It is simply just hitting harder, and because of that, it's pushed it over the edge into serious relevance. So I really like it. Give it a try if you haven't. Next on the list then is another classic weapon, the Sword of Night and Flame, which has definitely had its ups and downs in the past, but from right now I think it finds itself in a really good place. A mix of intelligence and faith as a weapon, you are using the stance to get off a laser beam of magic or a big arc of fire with a heavy attack follow-up instead. Both have their uses, but generally you'll be using the night version to spam the magic into a target. That's higher DPS, can be done at greater range, a lot more reliable. Now some enemies in the DLC are quite mobile and that can be awkward, and you don't really have poise protection during this either, but the range you can use it at is essentially a way to give you that window of opportunity despite that. It's still a great boss killer, one of the best in the game, and it lends itself well to a build that has a bit of faith and a bit of intelligence, giving you other options for incantations and sorceries. I like it a lot. Finally in A tier, and this probably would have been in S tier before the patch that led us into the DLC, it's the Bolt of Gransaxx and its unique weapon skill Ancient Lightning Spear. This one allows you to charge a red bolt of lightning and throw it at a target at hilariously strong range, hitting really hard too. This requires just dex, no faith for lightning. It's pretty cool. And the simple ability to apply damage from long range is a really beneficial thing, especially in this DLC against the more mobile targets. It opens up new punish windows, and you can just rely on just spamming this weapon skill to kill a target happily. It was nerfed though in terms of damage going into the DLC ever so slightly, which definitely brought the relevance of just spamming that ash down. But in itself, it's still a reliable spear, mix of physical and lightning as I said, still a great dex weapon in general. We are hoping that the new talisman, the Smithing Talisman, which is meant to increase the potency of thrown attacks, will actually start to work with the Bolt of Gransaxx, countering the nerf that happened. Maybe in the new patch we'll see something like that. But that now brings us up to S tier, where things get busted in terms of output and ease of use. Starting of course with the Mohgwyn Sacred Spear, which also was nerfed going into this DLC. They reduced the status buildup of the Bloodhound Ritual, the weapon skill, and in the past they've also reduced the range of it, which is not relevant in a boss fight to be honest. Essentially what you have is a weapon that you need to fully commit to be prepared for the Bloodhound Ritual. You want to give it as much power as possible before you use it, and there's many ways to do that, between classic incantations like Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow, leaning into the Frenzy stuff because there's new AR boosters from that, bleed procs increasing your AR as classically, and even the new bleed related food item, the consumable, that's better here too. So you're still going to absolutely decimate boss health bars by getting off the 3-part nihil, but more likely because of how slow it is, you'll get the first part off consistently, get a proc, rely on the actual buff that provides, then you're constantly looking for a way to squeeze out the full nihil to instantly kill the target or rip out like half of its health. So the damage still can't be denied, but I would say it used to be even better. Unlike the Death's Poker, which is basically just the same thing. An unremarkable greatsword, sure, but the weapon skill Ghost Flame Ignition is busted and one of the strongest DPS options you have for magic in the game to this day. What it does is it allows you to choose two things. You press the ash and create this frostfire ball, and then you can choose to do a light or heavy. The light will spread out that frostfire on the ground, dealing ticking frost buildup damage to whatever stands in it. In PvE boss fights, they're just going to stand in it, so it actually gets a lot of DPS with just that part. The other option is the heavy, which is kind of an explosive ball, dealing more stagger potential, knocking down smaller targets too, but not really likely in a boss fight. To achieve the maximum DPS then, you maximize your magic buildup, lean into that status buildup with the frost, and really just spam the light attack, spreading the frostfire on the ground consistently, dealing whatever damage you can to the target with other methods while the frostfire is active. Just because of the resulting DPS potential and incredible damage you get, especially after the first frost proc, this has to be S tier. It's still super good. Just like the Mariah's Executioner Sword and its unique skill, the EOK Dancing Blade. That's that magical ranged corkscrew attack for this greatsword, which will end in a kind of downward slam. This is cancelable, so you can roll out of it during it, but you will find yourself a bit stuck in it at times. In any case, with the amount of attacks that happen in that corkscrew, successive builds are incredible for this, and you'll want to trade with it just to get this off. The damage is undeniably worth it because it's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, for a one-hit wonder where you're just spamming L2 to kill everything you ever fight, it is one of the best options, even though the greatsword's not amazing itself. Still, as a weapon skill, it is absolutely up there, and we think S tier is still fair for it. Just like the Darkmoon greatsword, which, you know, technically its weapon skill is something you use once and then forget about, but it is enhancing your heavy attack, opening up that, so we do count that as a weapon skill. The weapon skill is called Moonlight Greatsword, and it buffs up the weapon in this frost magical effect. Now you have more frost buildup on your attacks, and your heavy attack has changed to have a magical arc tied to it. Going into the DLC, they did nerf that technically by reducing the stagger potential behind the range projectile arc. This means that it's no longer going to easily stagger targets at range, sadly, but they did make the stagger potential of the actual sword hit better. So if you use it at shotgun range, it's still actually really effective for staggers. This does mean that you can't consistently punish as effectively at range, but nothing's changed about the damage really. It's still really strong. It's a heavy attack spammer, super easy to use. You use FP to actually generate the buff, then it's just stamina to use the magic arcs, which is kind of insane in itself. It is just a classic, and it's still very good to this day. But that brings us to S+, where we have just two weapons. Starting firstly with the blasphemous blade, and of course, Taker's Flames. This allows you to slam down and deal this fire attack that goes super far and is actually quite wide as well. Going into the DLC, it was nerfed to no longer knock down targets and have as much stagger value to it, but it's like, whatever, it's technically buffed in this DLC in my opinion. With the new talisman, the Talisman of the Dread, this has increased its damage by 14%, so that again, that stacks with Alexander's Shard. You've got new fire increasing options like the Wondrous Physic option to oil targets for extra fire damage, or even better, the blood sucking one, increasing your AR flat out. There's the two-handed sword talisman, which will work for the basics of this weapon, but I mean passively, when you kill targets when this thing's equipped, you get health back. And Taker's Flame, when you land the Ash of War on a target dealing damage, you get 10% of your max life back. The bigger your health bar, the more healing that's going to equal. So it's incredible for sustain, it's super long range, it's still good for staggering targets, especially when hitting with the blade at the same time, and its damage is only better in the DLC. So yeah, one of the strongest, if not the strongest thing in the game still. Just competing with that then in S+ is the Wing of Astel. There's so much good that I can say about this weapon in itself, but the weapon skill itself, Nebula, is still one of the best poise breaks in the game. You spread this cosmic explosion ahead of you, dealing magic damage, it explodes and deals incredible stagger damage. You can spam this out so quick that you have constant explosions going, massive stagger buildup, instant staggers leading to criticals, or honestly just more Nebula spam. It's the most brain-off effective way to constantly stagger foes. It's also relatively wide in its attack, so even more mobile targets will still get clipped by it. So the damage is incredible, the stagger buildup is incredible, the control you get is incredible, and then the weapon itself is also incredible. A curved sword, a unique heavy attack for no FP costing magic arcs at medium to close range. It's just going to be an incredibly effective, easy to play weapon. In our opinion, Nebula is still S+. So there you have it. That is our 12.3 tier list for weapon skills at this time. Again, we've limited this down to 15, but there's honestly so many we considered for C tier, even many great examples coming from the DLC. We're still looking forward to whatever patch is coming to rebalance the weaker stuff, and that may change things. But for now, we're really happy with this list. If this video was useful or interesting then, do drop a like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice. to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.